Hello, everyone. It is that time again. I cannot believe this is the third show. Welcome to the Coded Podcast. I have to look at my notes because I always just start talking and forget. Let me try to act like I'm a little professional here. I always forget to introduce myself, say the name of the show. My name is Stephanie Reynolds, and I am the host of the Coded Podcast. And I am so excited about tonight. I was talking to my guest and my brother before the show, and I'm like, I'm a little nervous tonight. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the topic. I don't know if it's just kind of like just those, nerves that you normally have before you get ready to do something. But I think if I'm being completely transparent, um, whenever you step out and you start doing something that you know you're supposed to do, and it's kind of beyond your comfort zone, but you know is what God is saying, I think there's some times where you start to you just want everything to be right. You want it to be perfect. You want everything to go right. You want to make sure that you're doing everything right. And one of the things that I'm learning is that God is not looking for perfection. He's just looking for obedience. And it's something that really is able to bring peace because it's like he's not looking for me to have it all together. He's not looking for me to make sure that my makeup is perfect, my lights are perfect, even though we want to do things in excellence. He's just looking for obedience. And so I just want to encourage someone else who may be holding off on doing something because they're trying to get it perfect. They're trying to make sure it's right, to know that God is just looking for your obedience. I was thinking about my pastor this past Sunday. I think it was, one of the things he was talking about was keys, and how there are keys that are inherently connected to you, right? And so it's your voice is a key that only your voice can unlock. Your fingerprint, your purpose, what it is you've been called to do, there's doors that only you can unlock. And so I think when we begin to think about that, it empowers us, because the enemy is always trying to steal our voice and make us feel like our voice doesn't matter, our voice isn't necessary, our voice doesn't bring anything to the table. But when we really think about it, God has put keys into our voice that only our voice can unlock those doors. And so I just, again, want to encourage you, as I encourage myself, to know that your voice matters, and there are doors and people behind those doors that are waiting for your voice to unlock it and set them free and allow it to be open so that they can walk in what it is they've been called to do. So that's my little 10 cents for the night before we get the conversation started. But I'm so excited about tonight. We have a guest on tonight who I am just I have so much respect for. The guests that I've been having on the show so far, this is only the third show and my second guest, but still, um, are people that I have personal relationships with, but that are just such dynamic women, and that I see their lives outside of this, and they're honorable. They're practicing what they preach. They're powerful, dynamic. They have such amazing calls on their lives. And I'm so honored that they are agreeing to be a part. So I can't wait to get her on. But real quick, I'm going to do a little housework because, again, I got to make sure that I cover the things that are on my notes. Make sure you go, you share, you like, you subscribe to our YouTube page. We really want to grow this community. I believe that what Coded has to offer is going to be life changing, and it has nothing to do with me. But I believe that we are so much powerful when we really understand who we are, why we're here. And so, as we continue to enforce that, to cultivate that, I believe that lives are going to be changed. But we need your help to spread the word. So go to Coded TV on YouTube, subscribe, like, share, even if it's not for you, even if you're like, okay, this is not my thing. You know somebody whose thing it is. So share it to them. All right. And help us grow this community of women and men who understand who they are and are walking so authentically in their purpose. All right. Also go to our Facebook page, join the community there, log on to our website, codedwomen.org. It'll give you a rundown of all the things that we have coming up here lately. We're getting ready to have our conference in June. We're going to be doing prayer. And so we're going to be hosting Coded Prayer. We're going to be hosting our Coded Conversations, which are small groups that are specific to certain areas. So make sure you go on and just find out what we're doing. Again, share and help us to be able to grow this powerful community. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring our guest in because I do not want to delay. I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to talk because I do believe this conversation is going to be rich. And I just want for all of those who are listening, like this is not just about us getting on here and talking and, just having another podcast. My heart, and I believe the heart of those who come on this show, is really for lives to be transformed, is to use our journey, our experience, our transparency to help someone else be able to get through their process, to be able to move to their next place, to be able to go to their next level, to be able to find the healing that they need in order to become what God has called for them to be. And so I'm excited about this conversation, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in our guest for tonight. So, welcome to the show, Pastor. First of all, let me tell you this. I am going to be so intentional that I get her name right, okay? And I know she's going to be like, Stephanie, it doesn't matter. But I felt so bad because on our conference flyer, I put her name wrong because you know people as a certain thing and you forget that they're known by other names, to their audience and to their community. And so today I said I'm going to put all of your names. So she is Pastor J, aka Prophet J, aka Jasmine Sams, aka Jasmine Purham. She is all of those things and more. And so I am going to bring her onto the show. Welcome, Pastor J.
I am so excited, Stephanie. You have me back there cracking up. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna be civilized. But I'm so excited to be on this evening and to share with the coded nation, the coded family, and all of you who are coming from far and near. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on. So I'm
Yeah.
going to give you a little background before we start the conversation, just to let you know how Jasmine and I met. And this is why
Oh yeah.
purpose is so important because it puts you in position to make connections that go
Yeah.
beyond what you think they may be.
Oh yeah.
Last week we had Prophet June on. That came from me doing I edited her book, and then purpose led me
Awesome.
to helping with another podcast that reconnected us, and then we were able to connect on a different level. Jasmine, my husband and I were helping our current pastors as they were
Yeah.
building, and she's actually the cousin of my pastor's wife. And when we met, I don't know, it was just something. I've never told you this story, but I was like, first of all, she's super pretty. Her makeup is always on point. And I was just like, I need her to tell me how, first of all, how to get my makeup to look
We could
that
sit.
flawless. That's
Gotcha.
number one. I needed to find out where she shopped because she was always dressed so cute.
Oh,
She
so.
everything was just so put together, and I was just
Oh
like,
man.
I like her. She was so sweet, so
Yeah.
humble, just but so dynamic. She's like a quiet
Come on.
storm. She's really humble, she's really low key, but then once you get to know her, you're like, it's some stuff there. You got some power in you. And we just kind
I
of
bet.
connected, and I guess the rest, as they say, is history. But I have so
Yeah.
much love for her. She's my sister. We've been able to share some of our journey and help encourage each other. And so I'm really excited to have her on tonight. So Jasmine, I guess the first question that I want to ask you, that I kind of ask all of the guests, and I keep saying all, like this is my 7,000 show. So what I've
Yeah.
asked my last guest.
Yeah.
But I think it's important because sometimes we just see the end of a thing. We see the
Yeah.
finished work, or we see a more perfected work, and we don't always
Mm.
understand what the journey was to get there. And so I just want you to talk a little bit about your journey to unlocking your code to purpose, and how that kind of how you kind of walked through that.
Oh man, you asked me something major. Um, what do I start? How did I unlock my journey to purpose? That came with a lot of frustration,
Mhm,
a um, a lot of frustration. Some was natural frustration, some was God given frustration, which I call a healthy frustration.
mhm,
But how did I unlock it? Like you said, people see the now and they refute the beginning and the steps that were taken to get to now. And
mhm,
so been in church all my life, but that does not negate how heightened dysfunction has always been, or things that you have seen or heard that you were your innocence to to the eyes and by age, and that you were the innocence was no more after you've seen it or heard it, or you've gotten a different perspective. And some things I'd never expressed, and it just built up and became as questions and things of that sort. Fast forward, um, as I got older, I began to have like a serious relationship with the Lord. Um, Keep in mind, I have my own issues, my own dysfunctions. I'm still dealing with identity. Where in the world, should I be? Where's my placement? Always having a quiet demeanor, and then having a host of thoughts in your head, and no one to bear witness to what you're doing. Keep in mind, the Lord would visit me by way of dreams and visions, and I'm saying, oh my goodness, I know what temptations I am, tempted with, but the Lord is visiting me in my dreams. Now I know, looking hindsight, it was Him getting me to arise and measure where I was to come to a new place in Him. But when you are an adolescent, or when you're young, you're so focused on carnal things, or your boo. You're so focused on your clubs and your friends and all that, um, on looking right instead of being right inwardly. And so the Lord began to open my eyes to a series of things, and it came by way of people who was around me. And I would just say, that is not right. And I would measure it to what the Father, or who Jesus the Christ is and was. I would relay it, and I would say, you are far from his design. And I wouldn't say a thing. And I would speak to the Lord, and my mom would always encourage me to talk to the Lord, speak to the Lord, with the understanding that this girl who comes from a single parented home, full of frustration, full of anger. My home wasn't, it was full of tension and frustration. And so I had a whole lot of unspoken things um, within my understanding. And I knew it was going to take the help of the Lord to not only allow me to see myself the way He sees me, but to bring me a freedom. And though I was in something dark, but I knew it would only take the help of the Lord to rescue me and to rescue my soul,
Mm-hmm.
that would allow me to walk through every hardship and every obstacle um, purely, and walk out and come out as pure gold. So fast forward, I became part of different ministries, and the Lord would bring His frustration upon me, and I got antsy. And I would say, that is not like God. And the Lord would visit me and give me what to say. And sometimes I wouldn't say anything. And I would kick myself, why you're not speaking? So I started out as a worship leader. Then I became a minister, singing in the youth choir, singing in the young adults choir. All in all, I was dissatisfied. I was unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Doing works, and until I literally had an experience with the Lord. I believe I was a teenager, and I had a visitation with the Lord. Everything changed. Everything
Mm-hmm.
changed. How I seen uh, God, how I seen uh, church, how I seen different things, places of dysfunction, places, you know, default systems, just things. It raises up, where people are sitting comfortable and they can't sense it, they can't see it, and you're just getting red flags. You're just getting red flags, and those are the Lord trying to bring my attention in to
Mm-hmm.
Him,
Mm-hmm.
to ascend, to come to a higher place.
That's good. I want to talk about something that you mentioned at the very beginning that I think is really important, especially for those of us who grew up in a church. So, a little bit about how I can relate to that. So, I grew up in the church, right? I mean, my parents were heavily involved in the church. I went to a Christian school. Like, we were a Jesus family. But when you're
Yeah,
talking about identity, and you're talking about kind of growing up in that environment, I understand what you were talking about in terms of seeing a contradiction sometimes. And the contradiction for me was within myself. And so it was like on the outside, because I've always been kind of like the perfectionist. I've always been the one who, growing up, you know, Stephanie is going to do it. I was the go-to person. I was the one who was, I was always going to kind of do what I was supposed to do.
yeah,
Right. Or I
yeah,
was
yeah.
the person that people aspire to. And I remember even at a young age as a teenager, that I felt like I always had to put on this mask. I
Mm.
felt like I always had to, because I knew growing up in the church, you know what you're supposed to be. You know what people believe that you are and what people are expecting
Yeah.
you to be. But I didn't always feel like I had a space to be able to admit that that's not what I was at that moment, or
Yeah.
that I was struggling with some things, or I didn't have it all together. And what it began to do was create this kind of lifestyle for me of wearing these masks. Right. And so I
Mm.
knew when I went to school, I put on this mask. When I went to church, I put on this mask. And I never really was able to work out some of the things that were going on the inside of me, even
Mm.
though my decisions were playing those things out. Right. So I was seeing
Yeah.
them in my decisions, I was seeing them in my inner thoughts. But because you grew up in the church and because there is this expectation, and even you know what's right, right? It's almost easier when you're out in the world and you don't have that foundation because you don't know you're wrong. This is all I know. This is what I've grown up
Yeah.
in. This is what is familiar and comfortable. But when you know, and your life is not necessarily measuring up to that for whatever reason, I think that that can get a little difficult, and especially when you're in those years of trying to figure out who you are, right? So let's talk about that a little bit when we're talking about
Oh
identity,
yeah.
because when we start to talk about our journey to purpose and all of that, a huge part of that, a huge chunk of that, is really beginning to figure out who we are. And there's
Yeah.
two dynamics to it. So it's who God has created us to be, and then who life has made us. And
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to balance and separate those two so
Mm-hmm.
that we are really living authentically. So tell me a little bit about how you were able to uncover your identity and really be able to figure out who you were beyond the call and beyond growing up in church and all those expectations that come with it, and trying to kind of work out your own journey.
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I'm gonna be very honest. Um, being willing to go outside your comfort zone, and I know that sounds like a lot, but being okay with the isolation. You
Mhm,
know, this is not a popularity contest, and I believe I said it on a different day, but it's purity over popularity. And you got to be willing to come from all of the chatter, to come from all of the crowds, to come from the stands, to come from the quiet stand, to be like, Lord, I
mhm,
feel false. I don't
mhm,
feel like I'm being honest. I don't feel like I'm walking in your truth. I don't know how the world people are drawing to me. I don't know even what they see. They
mhm,
coming to me with more questions than I have answers for, and it's keeping me coming to you. But Lord, I mean, and you feel this pressure and it's this requirement of you, and that is so true. All that comes from your environment. That comes
mhm,
from your faith or your religious environment. But you have to be willing to come from the crowd, to come from
mhm,
your normal, to come from your familiar, because there's a stronghold and a strong spirit of familiarity, and we miss it so much because we want to stay with our cousin and our uncle, and we want to stay with our boo, and we want to stay with the ones we grow up with, in third and second and first grade. But the Lord is calling us to a new place, and
mhm,
that's what He was doing with Jasmine. He says, Jasmine, I'm taking you to a new place. You've
mhm,
been in every crowd you were in, you never felt comfortable. You've
mhm,
been in popular crowds, and even in a popular crowd, you didn't feel comfortable. I didn't
mhm,
feel comfortable until I pulled myself apart and let the Lord renew in me and just bring to me His design for my life. And that came by way of walking through deliverance. What is
mhm,
deliverance? The shedding of the old and the coming into the new. And I had to willingly welcome that process.
mhm,
And what actually helped me coming into deliverance, because I wanted it so bad. I was like, Lord, I would be in atmospheres and places, and sometimes around family members, and I would just leave grieved, and I would just be crying, balled up, just crying. And my husband, he said, "You okay?" I said, "No, I'm just grieved. I'm just grieved. I'm just
mhm,
grieved." And when I would begin to talk to people that I would glean to, even your pastors at that time, and they would say, "The Lord, this is the Lord's doing.
mhm,
That means He's perfecting something in you for a certain place and for purpose." And that's actually where bigger than me came from. But I had to be willing to come from everything familiar. You had to literally leave the old, forgetting and leaving all of your prohibitions and your anxieties to see the newness and to come and to arise to the new day that the Lord has for you. I'm telling you, it is unspeakable. It is unforeseen. It is a place like none other, but you must be willing to deny the familiar and familiar spirits and everyone's desire and everyone's idea of where you should be. You have to say, no, it is the Father's plan that I seek to please.
Mhm.
And you really have to become more deliberate. Now, what was different for me, Stephanie, was outside of church or anything outside of how people may see me now, I can be quiet. I can be reserved, and I'm naturally an introvert until I don't have to be an introvert
Mhm.
anymore.
Mhm.
And so, but when it comes to the enemy, oh, I lose everything. You will hear a growl, you will hear a holler. I lose everything for the sake of watch, just
Mm.
for the sake of sending an alarm, for the sake of my sister or my brother seeing
Mm.
the enemy around the corner. And so I lose all of that. And so
Mm.
what I'm telling the people on the other side of the screen is your original nature and your God-given identity and design, those two, they can't compare, and they should never reflect one another. How
Mm.
do you know when you've come into a new place with the Lord, when your old place no longer speaks to you? And
Mm.
some of us, we're answering to old places, and we're
Mm.
answering to old phone calls when we
Mhm.
know they have nothing to offer us. And the
Mhm.
Lord wants to bring us to a new place. I'm telling you, he did it for me. He had to bring me to a new place. And it actually, you were there for one of the services, I believe, where it was Prophet Kevin Leal.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you were
The
there.
infamous prophet Kevin Leal.
The
Yes.
infamous Prophet Kevin Leal. And God is my witness. The Lord told me He was going to say something to me because the time was was now. The time was then. And I'm sitting and He's teaching, and I'm sitting there, but tears. I just
Uh-huh.
And He calls me, and I'm saying, Lord, I knew it. Oh
Right.
my God, I knew it. And that literally, and since the Lord had been dealing with me, and I would relay it, to mentors or those, like I told you, your leaders that I would
Mm.
glean from at that time, even till this day. But they were with me in that earlier process, including my husband.
Mhm.
Um, and I would just relate to them, what I would be feeling and sensing and hearing the
Mm.
Lord say in the tugs and the chargings, and it allowed me to willingly submit
Mm.
everything to say, Lord, I know what that's about. I need to see
Mhm.
what it means to just not do church, just not look the part for church,
Mhm.
to completely let you do an inward work so I
Mhm.
can draw your people with the light of your love. And He started inwardly. And that's the only reason why you're able to gravitate towards me. That's the reason why anyone would gravitate towards you and me, is because what the Lord is doing on the inside of us.
Yeah, that's good. And I think one of the things that you said that is so important and is so key is that we cannot be afraid to go through the healing process. I think one of the things that keeps us disconnected from what God has called for us to be, and even seeing life through the veil of our brokenness, is that
Yeah.
there is this idea that it's not okay to not be okay, right? And it's like we
Mm,
all have fallen short. We all have issues. There is nobody walking this earth that is perfect. And we have to be
yeah.
willing to admit that and say, God, create in me a clean heart, renew, go deep and search those things, because what we don't
Yeah.
realize is whether we ever acknowledge it or not, they're still there. And we're living out of those places, and we're making decisions out of those places, and we're building
Yeah.
relationships, and we're having children, and we're building lives, and we're doing
Yeah.
all of these things based off of broken pieces.
Broken.
And
Yeah.
until we're able to really allow God and know that it's okay. And that's one of the things that when you talk about passion and you talk about, because I'm an introvert, people don't believe it, but I really am. I am
You?
so okay. Yes, that's why I tell my husband, and he's like, okay, but I really am. I'm so okay. When COVID hit, I was like, this is life. Like, we don't have to go
This is
anywhere.
it.
We don't have to do anything. No one can come over. Oh, yes, I am okay
Oh,
with that.
this is Steph, I'm here with
Look,
you.
you know, um, but um, but what I was saying was that there is this idea though that we have to hide our scars. We have to
Mm.
hide our wounds. We have to hide our brokenness, because if anybody sees them, somehow it disqualifies us. And it's like,
Mm.
no, we have to allow God to go in and deep, to deal with those hurts, to deal with the trauma, to not be embarrassed. And that's what Coded is all about. That's what makes me like jump on
Mm.
my chair, rally, because it's like, no, it is okay for us to say,
Yeah.
God, I don't have it all together. That's why I need you. I don't have all the answers. That's why I
Yeah.
need you. I have
Yeah.
experienced some trauma and some hurt, and I am living my life in a way that I don't like. I'm not happy here, and I don't have to pretend like I am. And it's okay to be able to present that to him. And in those
Yes.
places, that's where we're able to find the healing, and that's where we're able to transition, like you said, to that new place. And it's just, even with Coded, it's creating this space of transparency that says, listen, I'm on this journey just like you. I might be a
Yes.
couple of steps ahead or a couple of steps behind, but we're all walking this journey out together. And it's through the
Yeah.
transparency, right? Because scripture says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of the
Blood of the Lamb.
testimony.
Blood of the
And so
testimony.
it's
Yeah.
us being able to show, like, yeah, I got a scar here too. Yeah, I
Yeah.
experienced abuse before too.
Yeah.
Yeah, my marriage is not perfect. I have
Yes.
to work hard at it. You
Yes.
might see these Instagram photos of us, hey, married life, wife life, but I go home and we got to work through and
Real
fight
stuff.
and
Yeah.
warfare for this thing. And I think social media has made it where we're able to kind of create these lives, right?
Narratives.
We're able to
Yes.
create these pictures of perfection that say, I got the
Yes.
cutest kids, I got the perfect home, me and my boo are perfect. And we're all trying to aspire to something that doesn't even exist. That's not
Mm.
even real. That's not even true. And God wants us to be able to live life from a place of authenticity and truth, and that truth that's
Yes.
not based off of what life has made us, right? Because a lot of
Yeah.
times I think we can be like, I'm just like this. This is just who I am. And it's like,
You see?
no,
No.
that's not who you are. That's what
You were
life has
made to be
made
that
you.
way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you've been hurt. So that's why you're so quick to snap off on somebody. You're experiencing some abandonment. So that's why,
Yeah.
you enter relationships like that. You're dealing with some things, and guess what? It's okay. But let's
Yeah.
acknowledge them. Let's have a safe space where you can get healing from it. And so now you can be able to move forward from a place of your authentic self, who God has
Yes.
created you to be, and see life through such a free place. And
Yes.
so tell me a little bit too about Bigger Than Me. I know you have this ministry, and so talk a little bit about how all of that came into play.
Awesome. Okay, so Bigger Than Me came about in 2018. You just said a whole lot. I was on what you just
Oh,
was
okay.
talking
Well,
about.
go ahead. Go
But no,
ahead
no,
then.
no, 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 no. I was like, pass me the torch, Steph. Come on,
Oh,
pass
go
me.
ahead. Go
But
ahead. Look,
no,
look. I'm giving you the
you're good.
baton.
But no, something you said previously, and I'm just sitting here saying, um, well, for one, um, environments that house nothing less than truth and honesty and authenticity. Um, from our houses or from our church communities and things like that, where they weren't honest and transparent, and you thought strength looked like never talking about anything.
Mm,
But just like you talked about, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimony.
mhm,
And ooh, don't throw rocks at me. But
mhm,
the older generation, I believe they didn't do as good of a as well as we would have liked to sing when it came to being honest and transparent. When it
mhm,
came to their scars, yeah, we heard it. We heard it before you two. We would hear it.
mhm,
We hear our mamas talking about it on the phone,
mhm,
whatever, and they never talk to us about how to go through, how to come through, or how to go through gracefully.
mhm.
It wasn't a discussion, or
Yeah.
your leader vented about it through their message, and you were just like, oh, this is how you choose to talk about it.
Right.
Oh, okay. And that was
Mhm,
transferred to our current church culture, where you're at church to get a message or to hear a word from the Lord, but you hear your pastors venting, or you just hear it, and it's a lack of authenticity, and it hasn't helped us to
mhm.
be authentically ourselves.
Yeah.
But that's been over time. And one thing I've always told you, and I'll tell anybody who ever knows me, is I have a hard time being fake. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to be her,
Mm-hmm.
especially growing up. What happens in the house, what goes on in this house stays in this house. And you have to be in pain and never show pain on your face.
Mm-hmm.
That really conditions you to have a war or a military mindset. You want to cry out to somebody, but you got to suppress every emotion. And we
Mm-hmm.
say, and we wonder why people are losing their minds, or they're dealing with strong spirits of bipolarism or narcissism. It's because they're not vocalizing a pain, and
Mm-hmm.
they've learned how to maneuver through life, become a daddy, become a mama, become the,
Mm-hmm.
the author, become the musician, become the, become, start the global business. You've done it all, but get help for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. And that's one thing I can't be, and that's one thing I've noticed from you, Steph. I don't know if I should call you Prophet Stephanie, just
No.
to be appropriate, but being authentic.
Mhm.
If you got a down season, it's okay. But when you bounce
Mhm.
back, bring the message from that season.
Yes.
Don't
Yes.
just keep posting about it and he still ain't no good. No, no, no,
Mhm.
no, no, no. Let's take the message. Because one thing Prophet Leo verbalized to me, he said, listen, your story will bring God glory. Your story will bring glory to God.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting over here embarrassed about it. I'm trying to see, okay, what in the world can I take out and
Right.
what can I keep in? Because my parents in here, and then my
Mhm.
relatives in here, and this person in there, and what can I share? And I'm saying, oh my goodness, this is the trick of the enemy trying to keep me tied to familiar things. And
Mm.
you literally have to denounce it all for the sake of the message coming forth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the freedom costs, but freedom is such an
It does.
amazing place to live. And when
Yeah.
you think about it, to be able to be free in your thoughts, to be able to be free in the way that we live, to be able to be free to love in our relationships, free to
Yeah.
just be ourselves is such a powerful place. But like you said,
Is.
it's not free. You do have to war for it. You
It
have to be
costs.
intentional
Yes.
about it. But the cost is worth what you get. You know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
you can go and you can get you some shoes from Walmart and they might do the trick, right? They'll
Yes.
keep your feet covered, you'll be able to walk. But then you can go and you can spend a little extra and get your shoes from Nordstrom's, right?
Yes.
And so you might have to pay a little bit more and they both are covering your feet, but the one that
Longevity.
that costs more is better made. So you'll be able to
Yes.
wear them a little longer. They'll be able to endure. You'll be able to walk
Yes.
through some things and not have to worry about them
Yes.
tearing up. You won't have to go buy a new pair next
Yes.
week because they couldn't handle the weight. Come on, they couldn't handle the weight
Yeah.
or or
Yeah.
or what it was that it was going through. You know what I mean? And that's the part, is that we have to recognize that what God has for us is so valuable and is so worth us giving our lives for it and doing what we need to do. So let me ask you. I know we talked about being BTM. I brought that up, but we're going to talk about that a little later
Okay.
because I think,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll
Okay.
come back to that.
Okay.
But I want to talk about this because you and I have had some conversations about this. Both of us are married. We both have children. We both have
Yeah.
blended families. We both
Yeah.
are entrepreneurial minded, ministry
Yeah.
minded, all of those things. And so we've talked about the balancing act and
Yeah.
how to kind of maintain yourself because, again, we've had these conversations. When you get
Yeah.
married, when you have children, it's really hard sometimes to keep yourself, to keep focus of who you are, to
Yeah.
stay kind of in the vein of your identity, because then you start
Yeah.
wearing all of these other hats and you have so many more responsibilities. So, talk a little bit about how you're able to maintain your identity and find your identity even through all of these other roles. Because, as women, we do 50 million
Yeah.
things plus one any given day, right?
Yeah.
And we have the ability, God has given us the ability to multitask. Even when you think about the virtuous woman, she
Yeah.
did a lot of things. She woke up early. She was an entrepreneur. She was a good wife. She was a mom. She was doing all of these different things. And so just kind of how you're able to balance all of that.
Oh wow. You didn't ask me. You didn't ask me something heavy. How am I able to balance it all? I'm gonna be very honest. It takes me, well, first, being clear that no matter who I'm with, where I am, and whose mother I am called of God.
Yes.
I will
Mhm,
always be called of God. I can
mhm,
have another 10, 100 kids. I will
mhm,
always be called of God, and I am here to fulfill assignment. And
mhm.
so once you don't forget that, no matter what addition comes onto your life, it should emphasize or add to your
Yes.
assignment in some way. And
Yes.
so understanding that I'm called of God. And, and,
Mhm,
and why do I say it like that? And why do I put it like that? That's when you've worked so hard and submitted yourself and fought and warfare to your point, Steph, to get to this place, you're like, listen, I'm called. I don't need this coming in my way. If this
mm,
look like it want to stand in my way, we can
mhm,
figure out something for it. We can place this over. We can counsel this out.
mhm,
And that's why I'm so passionate because of working hard to get to this place. But how do I juggle being a wife, being a mom, having an entrepreneur mind? Man, this is gonna sound churchy stuff. It literally takes the Lord
mhm,
seriously. I would be a wreck, but I'm used to compartmentalizing things.
mhm,
And so when it comes to this is how I deal with it because I'm a leader as well. And
mhm,
so being present when it comes to being a mommy, being present with Joy as much as
yeah.
possible. When it's time for me to be, making sure that she ate, had a bath, just small things like that,
Mhm,
making sure. And I literally asked the Lord, Father, give me the wisdom on how to mother her. I didn't want kids initially because I
mm,
felt like my childhood was just a little too painful for me or a little too traumatic for me. And I said, I don't want to bring the child, through trauma.
mhm,
It came from a place of fear. And so initially I didn't want kids. And then when my daughter came, I wanted more and more and more and more.
mhm. Yeah.
um, and that was from a healthy place.
Mhm,
However, I literally for every assignment, every role, it literally takes the help of the Lord, Steph. I
mhm,
have a mentor, I have a spiritual mother, my birth mother. They are great tools to lean on. Why? Because I don't know it all. I need to be
mhm,
sharpened by someone who has gone before me. And so
mhm,
really sitting at the feet of those, being able to glean from someone is really what has helped me and has given me a reference and perspective for, okay, I can do this ministry thing, this mom thing, and still be a wife, a faithful wife, and still be, and able to invest in his vision or whatever he desires to do and be a pusher of that.
mhm,
And so I guess if I need to sum it up, I would say having a reference, it's
mhm,
helped me. And
mhm,
so when my mentor and spiritual mother came into my life, man, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I'm just like, where have you been all my life?
mhm,
She spoke to where I was and where I currently am. Her being a mom, being a mentor, being entrepreneur, everything, and
mhm,
being a person of power or a woman in influence. It just really spoke to me. And again, like I gave an example of my own personal mother. Um, I do it with the help of the Lord, Steph. And I could
mhm,
I still make mistakes. Sometimes I'm so into a thought that sometimes I don't hear Jewel saying mommy. And I'm like, oh,
mhm,
I'm sorry. I'm telling
mhm,
you, you gotta be
mhm,
willing to stub your toes. You gotta be
mhm,
willing to get it wrong sometimes. And then when it comes to the covenant places by way of marriage, oh man, that adds a different dynamic.
mhm,
Because you're like, okay, I can't give him the pastor. I can't give him the
mhm,
prophet. He
mhm.
wants his wife. And
Right.
then, but how can, when we get in a tough situation, how can I tell him what the Lord is saying? Or how
Mhm,
can I receive what he's saying the Lord is saying? Or how
mhm,
can I, and it's like, okay, how can I not be a certain way that intimidates him? Or,
mhm.
but without lessening myself, or
Yeah.
how to still be a woman and be poised and be gracious
Mhm,
without having to be next to nothing. And
mhm.
so those tug of wars and I'm be honest. I'm be very honest with you. The enemy is who he is, and he
Mhm,
will try to cause for there to be a rift, a riot. As when people come together, when kingdom people come together, and
yeah.
I would be lying to say that the enemy hasn't tried to come and attack my covenant place by way of my marriage, but
Mm,
that too took warfare, and
yeah.
that too took counsel and therapy, and and still does, and still
Mhm.
will. I don't believe
Yeah.
therapy or counseling should have an end date. It should
Right.
be ongoing. If you're married,
That's
keep on getting it. You
right.
know,
Right.
another pair of set of eyes is always good. But Stephanie has literally been the help of the Lord. I still get it wrong, and I'm
Mhm.
okay with that because I learned
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah.
But having grace for yourself. And I've grown to have grace for myself. If I don't have grace for myself, I can't have it for my daughter. I can't have it for my husband. Um, and so
Yeah.
just yeah,
Yeah. That's good.
just
There's
knowing, yeah,
no. Go ahead.
no, knowing when there's a call, whether it's from the church, my husband, my daughter, knowing how to answer and choosing wisdom when you're
Hmm.
answering and responding. I don't give her a pastor. I don't give her the prophet. I give her mommy.
Yeah.
She gets the vulnerable me. I don't give my husband. He sees. I mean, he sees me in my vulnerable state.
Hmm.
And that could be good and bad. If we
Right.
into it, I don't want you to see me vulnerable.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
he sees me in my vulnerable state, and I need to be able to do that. Why? But I got to stand before the Lord's people and be strong and courageous. I can't have my issue all over my face. But it takes wisdom. And if you don't like wise counsel, not you per se, but the viewers and the
Yeah.
listeners, if you don't like correction through love and wise counsel, like the Bible instructs us, we should have a multitude of counsel. We should have
Yeah.
wise men sitting around us to help advise us. We weren't in this life to advise ourselves or to counsel ourselves. You
Yeah.
need help outside of yourself. And
Yeah.
it took me realizing that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good. You said a couple things. I'm sitting here taking notes because I wanted to make sure that I
Oh
came back
man,
to it
I
because
talk too
it
much.
was some good. No, look,
Like I
we
see
got
you step
19
out,
minutes left.
look.
Look, we passing the mic back and forth. That's for good
Yeah.
conversation. But listen, so there's a
Yeah.
couple of things that you said that I think are so key. One, there's been a running theme both in this show when we were talking about identity and all of that, and then on our last show when we were talking about purpose, and that's the importance of having a mentor. I think
Oh
so
yeah.
often we try to walk through life trying to figure things out for ourselves. And the reality is there are some things that we will, but like you said,
Yeah.
the multitude of counsel, in the multitude of counsel, there is safety. And so having that person or those people, and I remember for a long time, it was something that I was praying for because, um, I really wanted to have, I needed in different stages of my life, different
Mm,
mentors. And I've always had my mother. She's had a strong influence in my life and she's been
yeah.
great. But then there are some things that mommy can't necessarily, because to mommy, I'm still her baby girl, right? So she's not
Yeah.
always going to be like, Stephanie, you need to do this because she's always going to be looking
Yeah.
out. And I understand that as a mother, as much as
Yeah.
I'm the director at the school my children go to. And as much as I love
Awesome.
all of those children, and as much as I care about all of
I'm
them,
riding for
when it
mine.
comes to Bella and Noah, you understand what I'm saying. so so I understand from her perspective there were certain things that she just couldn't give me because she was mom and she was always going to see things from a mother's perspective, as balanced
Oh
and all of that as she was. And so there were other things, there were other places in my life like the entrepreneurship, like even marriage, and a lot of those things that I wanted. I was praying for God to send someone, he did in every area of my life. Even as I was going through my singlehood before I got married, there were
yeah.
people that God put into my life to help me to be able to understand where I was, and to be able to find victory and come through it and get healing from those places and all of that. So that is something for anyone who is listening is so important. If you don't have godly counsel, mentors, people who are
Yes.
speaking into your life, begin to pray that God will send them to you, because it is so
Yes.
important that you have someone who is able to speak into your life, who is able to see you from a place
Yes.
that you may not be able to see yourself, who's walked through some things that you're walking through, and they can give you wisdom and counsel and direction, because the Bible says that all of a man's ways are right in his eyes. All of a man's ways are right
Yeah.
in his own eyes, right?
It's on us.
So
Yes.
when we're left to our own selves, we're always going to think that our way is right. We're always going to
Absolutely.
find a way to rationalize what
Yep.
we're doing and why we're doing it, because that's just how we're wired. That's how our brain works. And so you need to have someone who's able to speak into those places. And then the other thing that you were talking about when you were talking about your husband,
Yeah.
because, we've had these conversations before in terms of
Yeah.
just some of the trials and stuff that we've had through our relationship. But at the
Yeah.
same time, one of the things, and this is why knowing who you are is so important, and my recommendation, right, is that you do it before you get married and before you have the
Yes.
children and before you
Yes.
create the life, so that you're
Yes.
able to make better decisions that impact your life.
Yes.
Because in this place, it matters who you marry. It matters that you
Yes.
have, especially as a woman, it matters that I have a husband who supports me, who isn't
Yeah.
looking at me saying, well, you can't do your podcast unless I'm doing my podcast,
You see what
or
I'm saying?
I don't want you to be, when I minister at church or I'm doing different things, he's not keeping me from doing it. He's not keeping me from being who it is I'm supposed to be. And so it's so important that when we're
Oh
choosing
yeah.
our mates, we know who we are so that we can choose accordingly, and we can
Yes.
choose from a place of wholeness and completeness. And some of us, God is a redeemer and he's able to, correct and all of those things, but it makes life so much easier if you do it on the other side, right?
It
Then
makes
try
life so much easier when you
to
do it
walk
on the
through it.
other side.
Yes. Look, heed the lesson. You understand what I'm saying? All of you who are
Yes.
unmarried, desiring to be married, engaged, it matters that when you come together as two whole pieces. You don't want to be 50-50. You need to be
Yes.
100 100.
100.
He
Yes.
needs to
Almost
know
like,
who he is. You need to know who you are. So when you come
oh
together
yeah.
as one, you're creating a whole piece, and it's not all of these
Yes.
broken pieces trying to figure it out and cutting each other along the way.
Mm.
And so,
Woo.
um, but it was one more thing that you said that I wanted to talk about. We were talking about who you marry. We were talking about motherhood. That's another thing when we're talking about really understanding who you are and getting healing, because what we don't realize, having children was one of the most defining moments in my life, because
Oh yeah.
marriage shows you who you are. It really does. But having children, it opens up a capacity of love that you didn't even
Oh
know
yeah.
existed.
Woo.
There is, when you talk about unconditional love, you talk about wanting the best for somebody, being willing to do anything for somebody, have some babies. And when I
Yes.
had my daughter first, and I remember looking at her, and I'm getting emotional even thinking about it, because I remember, like, I don't want you to go through what I've gone through. I don't want you to have to fight some of the battles that you fought. So let me fight for my healing, so I don't pour that broken place on you. So
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
cause you to create a doctrine of dysfunction because I have not decided to deal with my issues. I
Oh
don't want you to think that it's okay to do and think a certain
yeah.
way because I have failed to address the places in my life that need to be dealt with.
Mm.
And so, as a mother and as women, it's so important, because there is a ministry that my mom and I had started called My Mother's Mirror. And it's this idea
Mm.
that
That is
our
so
daughters,
good.
they're our mirrors.
Yes.
When they look at us and when we look at them, it literally is looking into a mirror. And
Yes.
when she reflects me, I want her reflection to be whole and complete. I
Oh
want her
yeah.
reflection to be free. I want her reflection to be something that is pure and
Yes.
feels like she could do whatever she wants to do, that
Yes.
she is powerful and she is worthy and she is valuable. And that reflection is based off of what I'm showing her.
Mommy. Yes.
It's based off of mommy. And so it's not just about fighting for us at this point. It's
Oh
about
man.
fighting for the next generation. I want my son
Absolutely.
to look
Yes.
and see, this is what I want my wife to be. I don't
Yes.
want a wife who is going to demean me and who doesn't trust and hates men and
Yes.
doesn't know how to submit. That's not the kind of wife that I want my husband or my son to
Your
have. I
son.
want him
Yeah.
to look at his mommy and be like, I want a wife who holds it
Like
down for my
mom.
family, who
Yes.
is doing everything that she's supposed to do, and who's not perfect, but she is open to God perfecting her, and she is submitted to the perfecting process. And so when we're talking about healing, we're talking about identity, we have to understand that as mothers and as wives, because even with my husband, because we are connected and I am his helpmeet, his purpose is connected to me. And so I have a
Yes.
responsibility, and I have to be okay and know who I am so that I can help push him into his destiny,
Yes.
and I can love him and I can support him and allow him to do, because the Bible says that the husband was praised in the gates,
Yes.
not because of him, but
Yeah.
because of his wife,
The wife.
because
Yes.
she was doing what she was supposed to do, it
Yes.
allowed favor to be bestowed on her husband. And so
Yes.
just recognizing the capacity we have, the responsibility we have, how intentional we need to be about it, because it
Yes.
does not just affect us.
It does not. Oh man, you said a mouthful.
Mhm,
It definitely does come down the pipeline.
mhm,
Generational curses did not stop. They are it continues with our
mhm.
children.
Yeah,
And like you were saying, Prophet Stephanie, we have to be deliberate when it
yeah,
comes to, it ending with me, that dysfunction, the
yeah,
the elements of perversion, the projections from the enemy, the torment, the lies, the deceit, all of that. We have to be intentional. And if
yeah.
we don't have a good perspective or idea given to us by way of God, our children, we're going to wrongfully impact them, and
Yeah.
we're going to put them through some hellaciousness, some hell.
Mhm.
We really
Mhm.
are. And
Mhm.
so being a parent, like you're talking about, when you first had Bella, that's a major responsibility. You
Mhm.
can't. When I first had Jewel, you're talking about somebody who has never loved in a way. When
Right.
that little human came, I'm telling you, and
Yes.
it instantaneously, and you're
Mhm.
tired, but you're still
Mhm.
giving beyond what you
Yeah.
have. You are
Mhm.
fatigued, but you're giving beyond what you have.
Mhm.
You're frustrated, but you're giving beyond what you have. And you're doing, and it requires an element of, you become a mama bear. You just
Mhm.
like, I
Right.
got it. Wherever
Mhm.
direction is coming from, I'm
Mhm.
superwoman, Wonder Woman. I'm all of them for
Right.
my child. I will come out
Mhm.
of a bag on you for
Right.
my baby. I would, man, you true, and that's real.
Mhm.
Think about how my mother was with me,
Mhm.
man, and still is, and
Mhm.
same as to yours. And
Mhm.
it just intensifies. And I literally look at my daughter in such amazement, but I also look at her and I pray for her future, and I pray for days ahead that I may not be there, not because of death, but she will be on her own assignment or her own journey. And you
Mhm.
literally have to go in time and pray and ask the Father, move this out of the way, this obstruction, this confusion.
Mhm.
Go ahead of time and
Mhm.
save her, rescue her. And once she
Mhm.
gets to this place,
Mhm.
remind her, send her back to that very first place in which He's found you. And
Yeah.
so that's the Bible talks about training up a child in the way that they should go, and when they
Mhm.
become older or
Mhm.
mature, they won't depart from it. That is true. And the reference is what we as parents and as moms put into our child. We have to trust that what we put into our child is true. Really fast, I know you got something to say.
Mhm.
I had someone over here, and she said, "How do you get her to be like it?" I said, "Well, no." She was complimenting Jewel on being so. Um, what was she? She was. I think she was giving Joel a compliment, and I said, "I'm gonna be honest. Everything that she says, I said, parenting is not as hard. I said, but you're responsible for putting in her so she can give you the best results because it's so
Yeah.
rewarding.
Yeah.
You can say something to a child and they can respond to you in a hateful way. Well, I've challenged the person, who the child has been around and say, well, what have they heard? What
Mhm.
what what tones of hate have they heard, or what seeds were sown that they've heard? And so anytime we let our children, we should see love and grace and compassion. Why?
Mm.
Because we're putting that back into our child.
Yeah.
But you said so many
Yeah.
things. I don't even have my notebook. Now you got it.
No, that's good. And there was one thing that you said, and I want to make sure that we have enough time for for you to talk about your ministry, how they can contact
Oh
you, and all
yeah,
of that, so that people can connect. But you mentioned at the beginning about the older generation, the generation that came before us. So
oh
funny
yeah.
story. So my husband took me. My birthday is tomorrow, right? And so my husband took
Oh,
me. Yes, yes. Happy birthday
happy
to me.
birthday! Can we put in the chat real fast? Happy birthday,
Right.
Steph. Put it down there.
Listen, and look, because of my birthday, I'm gracing everybody with good weather for the weekend, right? I heard it's supposed to be like 80 degrees on Saturday, so
Oh
you're welcome.
wow. Thank you, Steph.
um,
Thank you.
but my husband took me to a concert last weekend. We went to go see Joe. It was Joe Maxwell and Anthony Hamilton.
Yeah,
And what was so funny, Jasmine, is that when we
yeah.
walked in, and I looked at the crowd, I had this realization that I have become an older person. It was nobody there under the age of probably 35. And so when he's calling off, Maxwell was calling off, the years, the decades. And so he's like 70s, and everybody was like, woo. And then cause my husband is wooing. I'm like, oh, okay. And then he was like
Right,
80,
right, right.
and I'm wooing. I'm like, oh. And then
Yeah.
he's like 90s, and it was like crickets. And then he was
See?
like 2000s, and it was just like, who is Maxwell and Joe and Anthony Hamilton? And so I had this realization, like, I have become the
The
older
older
generation.
generation.
But to your point,
Yeah.
we now have the baton, and we now hold the
Ah,
torch to
yes.
make sure that the mistakes that happened in the past
Yes.
from former generations, for
Yes.
whatever reasons, right? I don't think it was intentional. I don't believe it was
Yeah.
on purpose.
Yeah.
It was based
I
off of
agree.
what they knew, right?
What they knew.
But now we
Absolutely.
hold the baton. My husband was talking to me about different, he works at in retail, and so he was talking about some of the
Yeah.
young people that come in, and he was like, babe, when I listen to the conversations, like, I can't believe that these are the this is the way people are living. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it is just mind-boggling when I hear some of the stories, and I see what's on television, and I hear what this culture is experiencing and what they're dealing with. So we now have a responsibility
Major responsibility.
to
Yes.
make sure that we are showing things in truth, that we are being authentic, that we are taking this next generation under our wing and saying, listen, I'm not perfect. I don't have it together all
Yes.
together, but let me help you. Let me teach you what I know. Let me pour back. Let me
Yes.
show you my wounds and my scars and tell you my testimony so that you recognize you're not alone. Let me be a listening ear so
Yes.
that you don't feel like you have to carry the burdens by yourself and you
Yes.
can't talk about it because you're embarrassed, or because you've grown up in church and you're afraid that I'm going to judge you, or you're afraid that I'm not going to
Yes.
be there and I'm not going to listen. We now have to be responsible with the torch, because we are now the generation that we looked up to when we were young.
Yes.
We are now them. And so it's so imperative and important that we are doing the work on ourselves so that we can then help this next generation do the work that they need to do so that they can be who they need to be and who God has called for them to be.
Yes.
And it's so much confusion, so much chaos, so many
Yes.
things. When you're talking about identity and identity crisis, this
Yeah.
generation, it's unreal how they
Serious.
are,
Yes.
how confused, and
Yes.
how much they're searching in so many different places and different ways. They're searching. And so we really have to be in a position where we're not bleeding on them, because that's what's happened in the past, is that
Yes.
people were trying to do the work, but they didn't do the personal work. They were trying to
Yes.
deliver the message, but they didn't do the personal work. So in the midst of
Yes.
it, there was a lot of abuse and there was a lot of disappointment, because you were
Mishandling.
testifying
Yeah.
and you were professing, but you weren't living it. And so then when you fail, it caused a generation to turn away, because now you're just a
Oh,
hypocrite. And
oh
so we
man.
have to be accurate representations of the word,
Oh yeah.
accurate representations of Jesus Christ, accurate representation of womanhood, of wives. No, it's not okay for you to have a girlfriend and be married to me. That is not
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
No, it is not okay to have
Polyamorous.
somebody else in this
Yes.
relationship. You understand what I'm saying? It is
Yes.
covenant here. It is not okay for my son to wear, you will not wear a dress, Noah
Not
Grayson.
do
You
that here.
understand what I'm saying?
And I
So
still
we
love
have
you,
to be
but we won't
able
do it.
to profess the truth, but we also have to be willing to walk it out. We have to
So
be
true.
living right. We have to be living holy. We have to be living pure, not perfect, because none of us are perfect, but submitted to the process of perfection. And in that
So true.
place, that's how we save the next generation. It's not about talking anymore.
Absolutely.
It's about living. It's about
Oh,
being the vessel. It's about making sure that they are seeing the picture, that they are seeing it, and they're not just hearing it. And in that place, I
yeah,
believe that
yeah.
we'll be able to make a difference, but we just have to be responsible for it, and we can't drop the torch.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Oh
yeah.
my goodness. You said everything and it was just yes. I'm gonna go, Steph. But no, absolutely. I go by this motto all the time. Truth transcends and it
Yeah,
has the ability to transform. We supposed to be servants of the God of truth. Truth transcends and it must be processed. We must be processed through it So when we talk to a young person or a peer or anyone along these walks of life, it transcends, and we don't got to beat them upside the head
Yeah.
because we've been processed through it. And
Yeah.
you wonder why in times of old, where you're talking to someone and it's just like, yeah, you sound good to make it, it's just not resounding or resonating as it should.
Yeah.
That's because we haven't been processed through the pure places to be able to make our message pure. And what's coming from our mouths is not coming from Joel Osteen, TD Jakes, or from YouTube or something that we copied and pasted.
That's
We
right.
literally have to be
Yeah.
professors and
Yeah.
not just proclaimers, but we literally have to be doers. This is a
Yeah.
thing that we live. It must be every day. It is
Yeah.
ongoing. You just don't be delivered one day. You walk through deliverance. And when you're
Yeah.
done walking through deliverance, why? What happens? You're dead. There's no need to,
Right. Right.
go on, go on. He's
Mhm.
done with you. There's no more need of you. That sounds harsh, but I don't mean it the way it sounds. But no,
Mhm.
he's done perfecting you, there's no more need of you. Because
Right.
he's constantly perfecting us. And we need those like you, Prophet Stephanie, to say, listen, I'm not perfect, but the Lord is perfecting something in me even right now. I know
Mhm.
what it means to be down, to be
Mhm.
confused, to be struggling, to challenge myself because others are challenging me and trying to, weigh me and measure me. I know what that feels like. We need people to be honest so we
Mhm.
can bring people through deliverance and to the heart of God, our transparency and by way of our truth.
Yeah.
It's needed.
It's needed. And it's
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 needed.
important that we do it. So I'm so grateful that you came
Yes.
on and that you are a voice in our generation that is going to help those in the next
Oh
generation
yes.
and even those that have come before us, right? Because
Yes.
healing is something that transcends age, it
Yes.
transcends race and culture and all of those things. Is
All of
something
that.
that we all can relate to and we all
Yes.
need. And so real quick, tell me, because I want to make sure that they know how to get in contact with you. What is bigger than me? What do you have coming up so that we can support?
Awesome. So what is bigger than me? The Lord placed bigger than me in my heart in 2018. And it was right while I was coming through, walking through deliverance, fresh on. And like I expressed, it'll be dreams, visions. But what
Mhm.
what what stuck with me the most was, this is beyond you. This is bigger than you. This is
Mhm.
bigger than you. This is bigger than you. Understanding that I must overcome
Mhm.
and I must be delivered to deliver those. I must
Yeah.
overcome to help
Mhm.
others overcome. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than me. And if you would even see the logo, um, it's a cross and it's a greater sign pointing to the cross, bigger than me.
Mm. Mhm.
To
Mhm.
showing that the cross is greater. I don't care how ugly your story is. I don't care who put their hands on you, who walked out on you, who wrongfully abused you, put their words or mouth on you. I don't care who turned their back on you. The message that the Lord has placed on the inside of you should surpass and supersede everything that was wrongfully done against you because it's beyond you. Because the cross is greater. The cross is
Yeah.
greater. All
Yeah.
roads lead back to the cross and the dying of Jesus Christ. And so, how does the message resound? When we die, we become the greatest sacrifice.
Mhm.
God can get the glory. When we die and forget about our rejections and our temptations and our habits and our dysfunctions and the bloodline that we come through and the family, the generational curses that we come through, and we deny all that and we die so that the Father can live again on the inside of us and creating us a clean heart and renewing us a rightful spirit, we can live for Him and we can draw the masses just as Jesus the Christ did. He didn't become he couldn't reach masses until he was planted into the ground, until he
Mhm.
died. And
Mhm.
so if we want to be messengers of Jesus Christ, we're going to have to die and place ourselves into the ground and submit and to die
Yeah.
for the plan of God so it can succeed. So that's what bigger than me came from. It was on my dying process,
Mhm.
um, in my valley, and when the Lord was just ministering to me, it's bigger than you. You got to come through this. This is
Mhm.
beyond you. You're
Yeah.
going to help generations come through, and
Yeah.
that's the only message I would encourage and press for the last minutes. It's beyond you. It's bigger than you. But the enemy want us to focus on the turbulence. He want us to focus on the trauma, to get our eyes off God and to get our eyes off the bigger picture. Um, But yeah, and then you said, how can they reach me? Was that your second question? How can they?
Yes, yes. How can
Okay,
they connect?
so absolutely. So you can reach me on Facebook. It's under Jazz Purham, JAZZPURHAM, or Instagram. You can follow. It's I am Jazz underscore BTM, or you can even follow the Bigger Than Me page. It's officially Bigger Than Me, and that is on Instagram. Officially Bigger Than Me. Officially Bigger Than Me, and currently. Soon I will have a clarion call, and we're just going to release the word of the Lord and worship and pray. But that does not have a date yet. But you will see that flyer or that news that news flash, you would see that either on Facebook or Instagram. So again, Instagram is officially Bigger Than Me, and then Facebook is Jazz Perham. Either or, you would see the clarion call, and we just cry out to the Lord, for the times and the days that we're in, and for our families, for our futures, for our now, for next, just to hear from the Lord, because the Lord is speaking. He's just
Yeah,
looking for those who would lend their ears
that's
and who
right.
would lend their wounds, so He can
Yeah.
place something fresh in your wound,
Yes.
um, for the next generation.
Make sure you all go out, and I'm going to make sure that I put her all of her information on my pages too, so that you're able to connect with her and to support. Right there is this is again
Oh, praise
about
God.
creating community, about us supporting one another. We are greater and more powerful together than we are separated.
Yes,
Right, when you know who you are, there's no competition. Look,
none.
support her. I'm going to push her just as much as
Oh,
she
praise
pushes
God.
me, because
Yes,
we both recognize that there's no competition in this.
no,
It's about
none.
we ultimately we want the kingdom to win.
Yes,
so
it's all for
so
the
and
kingdom.
as I
Yes,
said at the beginning, there is a door that only my voice can unlock. There's a door that only her voice can unlock. There's a door that only your voice can unlock. And so when
yes,
something is voice activated, it can somebody else's voice can't come and do it. And so there doesn't have
yes,
to be any worry about if I support her, will you support me? It's about
yeah,
recognizing that
no,
we all support each other so that we can
yes,
ultimately get to where we need to be and where God is
yes,
calling us to be. So connect with her. When she sends out that information, we'll make sure that we share that as well. Jasmine,
yeah,
Pastor Jay is also going to be one of our speakers at the conference.
yes.
So make sure that you go on to codedwomen.org, sign up for the conference. And I say conference, I said this, at on the very first show. I called it the Coded Conference just because I like the alliteration, like it sounded cute. But this is really beyond a conference. This is really
Mm,
an igniting. This is a cultivating. This is a healing, a
yeah,
transforming, a life changing experience where through each speaker, you are going to get another dynamic. You're going to get another level of what God is wanting to do in your life. And it's going to open up some things, release some things, heal some things, and allow you to really walk in the fullness of what God
yes,
has called you to. So make sure you go on and you support and you be a part of what it is that I believe that God is building. Stephanie is not building this, right? Pastor Jay is not building this. It
no,
really
not at
is
all. I
the
couldn't.
Lord that is
Yes,
building this, and we're just being obedient to what He's saying. And so,
yes.
Pastor Jay, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you
I
for
love
having
you.
me. I love you to life, girl. We are connected. You're gonna have to
Yes,
try me out for you.
right.
But yes, we are forever connected. I am here
Yes.
for you. I
Yes,
am.
I
Yes,
believe that, and I agree, and I feel the same way. And again, make
yes.
sure that you go and support her. And then you're also doing the lunch prayer. Are you still? Is that something every week?
The
The
lunch.
prayer
Oh
during.
my goodness, you gonna throw me out there like that? So that's something new. I've had some downtime from work, so when I can get it in, I try to get in. But so what I'm trying to do is release the word of the Lord, typically around the lunch hour. But since Stephanie put me out there, then
I'm
yes, I'm
sorry.
gonna. No, you're fine because my husband literally said the same thing. He's like, "Listen, you need to like keep it, like become like ritual, like consistent
Mhm,
with it." I'm just like,
mm,
I
yeah,
don't know, cause yeah, it's just comfortable getting on that whole live thing. That's
I
out of my thing, Stephanie. I got to
I
get used to it.
understand.
But we're gonna
I
do better, Steph. We're gonna do better. But yes,
Yes.
as the Lord would allow, I would release the word of the Lord, or um, give what's going on in today's climate, or even some instructions. The Lord has prompted me to give instructions to and preventative measures against COVID. If you didn't have the vaccination, I'm not here pro or against, but if you didn't have it, He allowed me to release a way to make sure that your immune system is healthy in your family and things of that sort. But yeah, I'm just, if the Lord's speaking, and He is, I'm gonna say what He's saying. So
Yes.
thanks that you challenged me. Thank you.
Oh, look, I'm sorry. I caught the replay and it was just really good. So I just wanted to put
Yeah,
it out there. So
no,
make
you're
sure
good.
that you are following her, you're supporting her and being a part of
Yeah.
that lunchtime prayer and just whatever it is that she has going on. She has videos. My husband even talks
Amen.
about the videos sometimes that you do, that you just kind of come on and do these little snippets. So definitely
Yeah.
support her, follow her. Sign up for the conference. I'm going to play a quick clip
Yes,
about the
please do.
conference. We're going to do our maximizing minute, and then we are going to be done for the night. But thank you again for coming
Thank
on. This has been a
you.
great conversation. And look, we will be doing some things together here in the future.
We have to, and I gotta have something to have you on. I really do, because people need to hear what you have in your mouth, in your
Oh,
mantle, and in your belly. You have so much grace and just so much. You're so poised,
oh,
and I appreciate it. Literally, literally, I really do. Yeah,
oh. Well, I love you.
I
And
love
I
you back.
appreciate that. And we are going to go ahead and play. We went over like 10 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and
We did. I'm sorry.
no, it was good. That's good. That means
Okay.
that the conversation was good. So
Okay.
I just want to make sure that I play this real quick. I will talk to you soon. Thank you again for
Okay.
being on the show.
Thank you for
And
having
make
me.
sure you guys sign up for the conference in June.
Register. Register. Code it. Code it. Register. Y'all don't want to miss it. I'm telling you.
All right. All right. Let's play this clip really quickly. Y'all know I'm a one woman show here. So let me. All right, guys. So June 10th through 11th, go on codedwomen.org, register, share, like, subscribe, all of those good things. Spread the word. The last thing we're going to do is this maximizing minute. Thank you so much for staying with us. I have seen the little ticker show that you all have been consistent and stayed with us throughout the whole show. I appreciate your support. I appreciate all of the encouragement and just being a part of this community. So we're going to do our maximizing minute really quickly, and then we are going to call it a night. All right. So, one of the most powerful questions that we'll ever be able to answer or even ask ourselves is, who am I? Typically, when we ask that question, what we start to do is rattle off what we do. So, we start to talk about our profession, we rattle off our titles, we talk about all the roles and responsibilities that we have. But when we really take away all the hats and we take away all the roles and we take away all the masks, what are we left with? So there are two things to consider when we talk about identity. We talk about who God created us to be, right? So he created us as a workmanship, as a chosen generation, as a royal priesthood, as male and female. He created us with in his image, all of these things that God has created us to be. And he's put inside of us and connected to that identity a unique purpose that he has destined for us. And so connected to the who is the why. And then the other part of the identity is what life has kind of created us to be, right? And so the traumas, the triumphs, the ups and the downs, the good and the bad, all of these experiences that we experience begin to define who we are and begin to impact the lens through which we see our lives. And what happens is how we respond to those things either strengthens the identity that God had inherently created us in, or it weakens it. And so it's so important that as we're going through these different things in life, as we're experiencing life, as we are going through the different trials and the different tribulations, that we respond to them in a way that allows us to that is not based that allows us to live our life in a way that's not based off of the hurt, that's not based off of the vows that we've made, that I'll never be this, or I'll never let him do this to me again, or I'll never be like that, or the self-protection or striving to prove ourselves as worthy, or creating a doctrine of our lives that's based off of dysfunction and error, or even allowing us to get caught up in the roles that we play so much that we forget who we are. We have to remember that what life has made us is not necessarily who God has created us to be. And so we have to allow God to go through the process, take us through the process so that we can see ourselves authentically and truthfully through the lens of the one who created us. Living our best life is not about IG likes, it's not about keeping up with the Kardashians, it's not about money and cars. It's about getting to a place where we reconnect with God's original intent for our lives and understand who we are in Him, experience the healing that comes through Him, and live the life that was destined by Him. Anything else is just smoke and mirrors. And so, you all have a great night. And remember, you were made for this. Good night, everybody. I love you. And thank you for tuning in.